it's just an expression. Well, it's also an art. Yeah, rolling, like we're rolling down. Fucking rolling. We're rolling. Season 2.
Welcome to the Cali High Podcast. I'm your host, Chenzo Nico, and I've been a cannabis connoisseur for 50 years. Today we will talk about all things cannabis as they relate to California and beyond, from the history of buds in the state to laws that govern its use, how notable personalities of the industry and related arts, including music, shape the industry. We will bring you reports from dispensaries, cultivators, medical patients, and recreational users. Hi, folks, and welcome to episode 15 of Cali High. I'm Chenzo Nico, your host, and I'm here with Joe, the sound guy.
Hi, I'm Joe, the sound guy.
This week, we have Cali High's Season 1 highlights, where we revisit our guests of Season 1. Armen Paronyan of LA Cannabis, Jerrod Kiloh of the United Cannabis Business Association, Santa Cruz Canna Farms, Roger Steffens, author and DJ, Tom Schnabel, DJ and author, as well as a lifeguard, and Richard Dailey of Third World, who gives us some perspective on amazing reggae history.
We covered all in season 1. Well, not all, but we got off to a pretty good start. I mean, we talked about the growing, we talked about the marketing, we talked about the legal issues, we talked about the illicit market, and the science.
Oh, Magdalena and Maydelle from LA Cannabis, who
cool.
are doing supercritical CO2 extraction of full spectrum oils. Oh my God.
That was fun.
That was fun. But first, let's listen to Armen Paronyan. He talks about the illicit market and the tainted product.
We're doing a lot of PR about the illicit activity and then the testing, and how California Health Department just put out a report they did on the day when they did those raids a few months ago. They took samples and sent them to labs. 75% of the product was contaminated with pesticides and metals. So that release, that needs to be big news. People need to know that. The consumers need to know that. And, it needs to come at a bunch of angles, right? Since it happened at
Well, enforcement's
all
always
levels.
been a little bit lacking here on the municipal side here in LA, right?
Right.
And that, I open my Instagram and I see an ad for a sesh.
Right.
PM me for the location, and you get to go down and buy as much illicit weed as you want.
No, it's a tough, enforcement's a tough battle as well. 2 years ago, we had a bill in Sacramento that UCBA was supporting. So the president sent a link to listen in. So we're listening, and then the head of the police association, the executive director, I don't know his name, but he was on the panel speaking in front of the state senators. And he said, if you guys gave the police department the whole $100 million a year budget the state has to regulate cannabis, we would not be able to tackle the illicit market. He just says, it's too robust. We're never going to tackle it. We can't tackle it because we don't have the resources, It's too robust. It's too big, right? So when I heard that, I'm like, enforcement's great. We need it. The more there is, we feel it instantly. But then their favorite illicit store closes down, which has $15 aids. Then they come to the legal store for a day or two, and then they get a text message, we're here now. Or they'll come, and then they don't stick around because the price drives them back, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, price is a driver for the majority of the people. I think the older crowd is definitely not going to want to put their health at risk, but a lot of the younger consumers just don't care, right? If they care, they wouldn't.
Some of them care about how much they're spending. So
absolutely. So that's what's driving them. So enforcement's an uphill battle. It's going to take some time, and we just have to keep fighting. Fighting for the legal market. It is outside of the economics. For me, I think what the governor and everyone's looking at it as a tax thing. It is a health crisis. It's a major health crisis. There is the illicit market is tainted product. It's like going back to a village in Russia right now, which has still alcohol that they make in tubs, and people are. This is the same level. What's happening? There's illegal grows with pesticides being used, growth hormones being used, all carcinogens, and people are consuming it. And then, it's a major health crisis. I think it's not being voiced enough.
No.
Where any other industry that had a crisis like this, it'd be front and center. It's just the cannabis industry. I feel like UCBA is the only organized group working in California right now. A lot of the other associations are not as organized as us, not as funded as us, but the money keeps coming to the group because things get done.
Who is the California Cannabis Industry Association?
It's the United Cannabis Business Association, UCBA.
No. Is there another
There's
organization?
CCIA, which is the California, right?
Yeah.
And then there's NCIA, which is the national.
Mm-hmm.
And, CCIA has been around longer. I just feel they do a great job. Any advocacy is great for the industry, but we're doing a lot right now. And if we all kind of got together and did more, it'd be a lot better. More needs to be done, because I don't think, you guys didn't know that the health department put out a report and 75% of the product in these stores was contaminated.
No.
Nobody knows that. Why would they not? If there was a salmonella outbreak, it'd be on Channel 9, Channel 7. It'd be a recall. There'd be the batches on. They would tell you where you bought it from. Return it right now. If you're feeling sick, go to the doctor. It'd be on for days until it was tackled. We don't have that urgency right now. I just feel cannabis is low on the totem pole for some of these regulatory people, or it's just not in their face, so they're not dealing with it. But it needs to be in their face, because I look at, for us in the industry, the pedestal's tilting. The illicit market is losing market share by the day. When I look at the data, that we're getting new customers, that's happening, but that's slow. The health crisis is way more serious,
Yeah,
it could take 5 more years before the illicit market really struggles out here. So 5 years of tainted cannabis
could do a lot of damage to people.
It's going to do a lot of damage to people.
3 days ago, I read in the newspaper that the Bureau of Cannabis has rounded up several distribution points for illegal vaping cartridges here in LA. These black market cartridges contain vitamin E and other additives, contaminants that have been blamed for deaths and illness across the country. Has the problem affected the legal cartridge industry?
The CDC put out the report, the federal government's put out the report. The majority of the product was THC vapes in the illicit market. So I think there was only a handful of cases in Washington where they claimed it was bought from a legal source. But again, it's all anecdotal. Someone tells you, where'd you buy it from? Oh, no, I bought it from an illegal. No.
Yeah.
So we don't know the data on how. I don't think anyone has receipts and invoices to prove back that, hey, I bought it from here. I'm not sure. I think one case was traced down somewhere. So we know the majority of the problem is from the illicit market. I've read different articles, different opinions from different consultants across the country. And why was this not happening the last 4 or 5 years when vaping kind of got popular in the last 3, 4, 5 years? And some people are saying, there has been a shortage in the illicit market. So this pedestal's tilting a little bit. What these analysts are saying is, as the enforcement's happening, as these guys are going on to metric and state track and trace, there's less illicit oil available. So what ends up happening is they're cutting the THC with more vitamin E. So that's where these outbreaks happen. So they found, CannaSafe did a testing study, and they found that majority of them only had about 25% THC, which is 75% cut with some type of glycerin or some type of vitamin E, some type of other cut.
Definitely not your full spectrum oil.
So what's happening is the orders are coming in because the demand's going up. They don't have the oil, but the boxes need to be filled. So what's ends up happening, they're just like, okay, we don't have it, just put more vitamin E. It's like 30 cents a gram.
Sounds like the illicit cocaine industry.
So it's so that was
just cut it.
That was one analysis that I had read in one of the articles, and I'm like, that's what's happening. These guys are getting more desperate, and then it's this health crisis, and I think it's a nationwide thing, let alone California. This is a nationwide thing that's been front and center, and it's because we still don't have federal reform. We don't have any kind of
alcohol, tobacco, firearm, and cannabis.
So we're still a young industry. It's going to take time to develop into that, but the demand is growing so fast that I think the health departments and the governments need to like really step up, because it's already a major problem. Like, they're not stepping up. It's turning into a serious health crisis. And Canada had it 2003. They've had medical, and it's Health Canada. They track all their patients because it's a government run. So they have a lot of data on the people of Canada who are in the Health Canada program. So they put out a study. I'm actually going to pull it up because someone wanted to see it. They did a 10-year study from 2003 to 2013, 10 years. They found that men with medical marijuana cards had 30% more likely of testicular cancer. So they tracked it down because Canada had a collective model: home grows, pesticides, illicit, just so much gray. In the gray, that's where the illicit happens. So they saw that, hey, we need to take charge of this, and within 6 months they had an emergency regulations, and Canada was the first state to do federal legal medical marijuana, and that's where all the big money went, because federally legal there, because they saw right away, whoa, what are we doing? This is insane. We're letting our residents, our citizens,
poison themselves.
Because we were too scared to take on this industry, and they made a change right away. And for me, it's like, why? There's the same problems are happening here. We just don't track all 300 million people and their health. We don't do that here, right? We don't have that data.
Wow, I didn't realize it was such a problem, really.
Not many people do.
I mean, just smoke it and you don't care. I mean, you really don't know what's going on.
Well, it's really important to get tested product.
Well, we're making progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It should be more of a health awareness situation.
Well, it is now.
Yep.
What's next?
We're going to hear from Jerrod Kiloh, and he talks about some of the United Cannabis Business Association's bills they've been trying to get passed. So you mentioned to me that the UCBA is sponsoring bills and voter initiatives that advocate for the legal community. How is that going? And can we talk about those efforts of the UCBA to shape the cannabis industry here in California?
Definitely. I mean, one of them that probably put Weed Maps into a position to where they were going to have to comply is we ran AB 1417 for 2 years in a row, which was an advertising bill that held people accountable in the state of California, that you could have a $30,000 a day fine if you were found to aid and abet illegal activity, where we were looking at Weed Maps going, well, you're creating carts for people, you're delivering to them, you have an active menu, you knowingly know that there's legal and illegal people on your website. Since there's only a few real licensees, how can you have like 3,000 account holders in the city of Los Angeles when only 135 people legally have a license? So there was definitely something that they wanted to hide behind the 230 exclusion on the federal guidelines for the communications.
Speech.
It was the Communications and Decency Act gave directories like Yelp the ability to not have to be legally responsible for the content that was on their website because they were just being a platform. And we were like, well, Weed Maps is more than just a platform. They're actually aiding and abetting and facilitating sales.
They're profiting from this illegal activity.
So our 1417 was there to say, here's some accountability. So, we wrote it, we co-authored it with the UFCW, the local 770 was our closest union representative. And we got Blanca Rubio to author it. And, I would go to state assembly meetings and testify in front of the state assembly and business professions, talk about the bill, what effects it would have and what effects Weed Maps was having. So that's just one bill that we're just trying to level the playing field between the legal and the illegal community, because I don't ever think we're going to get rid of this whole illicit market. That's not the goal. Mm-hmm. The goal is to find some price parity. The goal is to find some parallel industries that don't necessarily confuse the consumer on what they want. Now, Weed Maps was confusing the consumer, putting a legal and an illegal business next to each other and pitting them against each other, especially with price. So that was where I felt like that was a little bit too far into the confusion to the consumer. So that's why we fought that bill.
I'm voting for Jerrod on the next election.
Absolutely. I can see why he's the president of the United Cannabis Business Association.
This man is taking names and rolling joints.
Mm-hmm. And so now we hear from the scientists at LA Cannabis, Magdalena and Maydelle, as they explain the supercritical CO2 extraction process.
The science girls.
Okay, so I'm still a little fuzzy on this thing.
Sure.
Okay, that thing was a giant, like, grinder,
Yes,
right?
it's a
Okay, and you bring it over here, then you put it in here.
Yes.
And these are the big tubes, they're cylinders.
Yes.
Big silver cylinders. And so what then happens? It heats it up, or they use the
Yes.
CO2?
So these
what does
canisters
the CO2 do, actually?
are heated.
They're heated.
So actually, the CO2 flows from this big recycler over here. So something that's very important is that we try to conserve as much CO2 as possible. So what you're actually doing is you're running CO2 through this entire line, but it's recycling it every single time. So you're not just pushing CO2 through and then it's suddenly going up into the air. You're recycling it through.
Oh, that's excellent. So
the
we have a
CO2
smaller carbon footprint here.
Yes, exactly. So CO2 comes through the back here, and down here there's actually a chiller. So the system does several things with temperature. It cools it and it heats it. But specifically, when it's going through this part here, this is our very large pump that costs a lot of money and was custom made for this equipment. It pulls supercritical CO2 through the flower. And it goes from the bottom up to the top.
What is supercritical CO2 as opposed to not so critical CO2?
Right, so the typical way it's explained is that there are 3 phases that matter comes in. It's solid, liquid, or gas. And we know that CO2 in the air is a gas. But when you bring it up to a high temperature and pressure, it actually reaches a supercritical phase, which is sort of the line between liquid and gas. So you think of it as this super fluid, everything is very soluble in it, and so you'll pull out all of your extracts through the flower that way.
So it's a liquid then when it goes through us.
So it's technically a super fluid. It's technically this very specific phase.
Hovering on the line between gas and fluid?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I feel like my brain is hovering on the line
If you want to
between
learn
gas
more,
and fluid.
if you want to learn more, I guess, just for anyone out there, you could look at phase diagrams. So
Right.
there's water. Well, water, for example, comes in liquid, gas, and solid. And there's actually a point in a phase diagram that's called the triple point, where water exists in liquid, gas, and solid form, which is, it blew my mind when I first learned that, but
And that's
basic
due to
chemistry.
pressure or what
If you put water at a certain temperature and pressure, yes, you
Yeah.
can get that triple point.
temperature and the pressure?
Yeah,
Right.
so it's like the same thing we're doing with the CO2, except instead of getting it to the triple point, we're taking it to a supercritical point.
Now, is this a much cleaner method than, say, butane or alcohol?
Oh, absolutely. So something that's great about CO2 is that, as we know, it exists in a gas phase at normal room temperature and pressure. So when you're pulling it out of the instrument, there is no CO2 left in it. It just dissipates into the air. As opposed to butane, which you usually have to pull through some sort of rotary evaporator to pull off, and then you have to figure out what to do with that butane afterward.
Right. And if it's not done right, it tastes horrible.
Yes.
And it's bad for you.
Yes.
Well, this is interesting. What a great little machine here, or group of machines all working in concert together.
It's like science, but cuter.
Did they blind you with science?
They blinded me with reefer.
Yes, indeed. And so now we hear from Santa Cruz Canna Farms, Daniel, Jules, and Jules' father.
We're going to the farm.
An 80,000 square foot greenhouse
Yeehaw.
surrounded by organic strawberry farms.
Green acres.
Oh my God, when you open that door and go in, the smell was just...
All the
Oh my
good
God.
stuff. Is this an 80,000 square foot space?
Oh my God, bro. Oh, it smells so good in here.
I love bringing people in here for the first time just because we do get somewhat desensitized walking in here every day. But, I love to live vicariously through you, and all this stoke is real, Yeah,
It's definitely real,
it's
bro.
awesome. So we grow in 45-gallon pots and 10-gallon pots. our first year we went full season, so kind of like outdoor. We all came from growing outdoor, and we're doing greenhouse for the first time. We're like, let's do full season. It's what we know. We had these 45-gallon pots spread throughout the whole greenhouse. We quickly realized that doing light deprivation is going to be the technique that we'll succeed with here. So we moved the 45s into each corner. We have this corner and that corner down here, and then we have 10s everywhere else with our nursery right here.
This is the corner here?
This is one corner, and then we have another corner down there.
It's a
which you'll
big
see.
corner.
And we have, well, it's, yeah, kind of like corner here, corner there. We have every process growing at every time. So we have cuttings that we're taking fresh.
Smells lovely.
This is the strawberry bananas. Yeah.
Smells lovely.
And they're a little bit smaller. You know, this is in the middle of the winter. We've had a pretty amazing winter though for cannabis. We need the rain for California, but the plants are happy. They love the sun.
Yeah. So when it rains, you provide your own water. You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
And do you-
multiple. We have well water, and there's a big rain reclamation tank too that they use.
Do you do reverse osmosis?
No,
No?
it's just filtered. Yeah, we test it
filtered,
frequently.
so it's not not high in. Yeah.
Yeah, we use too much water to really do RO, just because we'd be wasting so much water, because it's like 3 to 1 that you get out of the water when you're doing RO.
Well, if the wells aren't polluted,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
no need.
And now you know that we're testing parts per billion. Is we have
Parts
to
per
be
billion,
testing
yeah.
the water
Not million, but
constantly.
billion.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy just because when scientists talk about, say, you know, anything they might test for, they talk about it in parts per million. When they test food, they talk about it in parts per million. But cannabis has a higher standard, and it might be a little bit harder, but we make it happen.
Probably one of the strictest testing and
100%.
purity regulations of any crop.
And so you'll see we grow all of in our nursery. These are for our production. We don't grow for other growers, though that's something we're planning on. But keeping it all within our supply chain, the plants don't get moved around too much. They don't get stressed. The only time we move them is from these tables over to the 10 gallons or the 45s. And then that's their final resting place. So it was, you know, it's been incredibly advantageous to just keep a control over everything. You know, our cuts, our mothers, teens, and then, you know, complete control of our flowers.
Wow. And what do you have inside these plastic things?
We had a dry shed. We set up an auxiliary dry shed, and we lined it with crates with this to insulate it. And then
just papered kind of.
Yeah, it was just for insulation. And then
How cool.
those ended up getting put here for our tables.
Are these mothers?
Yeah, so these are our mothers. Some of them are slightly neglected. Let's get a picture of maybe those ones.
Yeah.
Let's see, or one of these. They're just, we went through a big R&D phase. And so we're weaning out the ones that weren't working for us.
That's cool.
Yeah. You come check out the little babies over here. This is the cloning station.
Into the cloning station. Here we go. Wow.
This is where all the clones live. They'll be in here for about 2 weeks. We transplant them into the 4x4s, and they'll be there for about 2 more weeks. And then we do about a 4-week veg and an 8-week flower.
4-week veg and an 8-week flower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends. I mean, so in the summer, stuff just wants to explode. Like we get up to 6 inches of growth a day sometimes. In the winter, maybe 6 inches in a week, maybe.
That is fantastic.
We live and die by the sun.
Well, it seems like even on an overcast day, you get sun.
Oh yeah. Well, and we're so fortunate to have the glass. Like I said, I mean, the light penetration, especially when there's low light like this, it magnifies the little bit of light that's there.
Yeah, and you've got some supplemental lighting here.
Yeah, and this is just to keep them in veg, 24 hours.
Right.
And you'll see, so any of the rooms that have lights on, they're in veg. We turn the lights off when we flip the flower. So anything that doesn't have lights on is in a flowering phase. Anything that does have lights is still vegging.
Wow.
But yeah, here,
How many people work on this?
out. We have about 20 employees total as far as cultivators. Ebbs and flows, and slows down in the winter, but in summer when we're popping about 14 full-time. Yeah.
So we're at springtime right now, basically, almost.
So we're gearing up. We're getting some grows turned. But this is, we're really stoked at this flower.
This, oh my God, what is
this? This is something we're calling lemon zest.
Oh my God, what is that? Wow.
Lemon tree. Are you familiar with the lemon tree strain that's grown in Santa Cruz?
I've had, no.
So lemon tree is a super lemony cut that is grown in Santa Cruz. We're close with those guys. And we have one of the original lemon tree cuts that we bred with sour tangy to give this incredibly citrusy terpene profile that we love a lot. That's cool. So these are about a week away from harvest.
Are they?
Let's go, we'll go through.
Yeah, I
and check
remember
some
your
other
post. It
cultivars
said a
out.
few weeks away, and I was
Yep.
like, oh, we're coming at the right time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Do you ever run through here naked trying to collect hash on your body?
Right? I love it.
Wow.
But yeah, all premium. Like Steve said, we made a decision to only grow premium, no mids.
This is the same lemon?
This is the same one, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good decision. I mean,
Yep.
you know, what the hell, bro?
This is all mandarin cookies.
Uh-huh.
So similar cookie structure, but super frosty, super purpley.
Yeah, the leaves are fairly purple.
I love and this, for whatever reason, this bed got a little bit more purple. But the smell of these two together, getting the orange cookies with the lemon zest together.
These are
I
orange
love
cookies?
the blend. This is orange cookies, this is that lemon zest we were talking
Oh, the
about.
lemon zest. Yeah.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the plants in Lebanon. Remember, look at the top of this. See how the, like, no, maybe? I don't
And
know.
they're getting we call it like lamb's ear or the tacoing.
Uh-huh.
So you know it's, very potent and premium when you get this trichome production all the way out to the tips
All the
of
way
the
out to
leaves.
the tips of
that
the
it's
leaves.
making the leaves curl inward.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a beautiful bed right here too. Some pretty stuff.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, for the middle of the winter, it's not too bad, huh?
No.
Yeah.
Here,
Pretty
let's
stoked.
get
let's
it
do
done.
one. Nice.
Oh my God.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, and it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more nurture, but it's our passion. It's what we do best, and we wouldn't do it any other way.
Uh-huh. It takes passion to do something right,
Yep.
and it's almost hard to keep it from being right if you have the passion. Yeah. This is amazing. Well, I'm ready to work here.
Yeah. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Well, did you fill out the application?
Yep, sent it in already. But seriously, that was unforgettable. Oh my God.
Who's next?
We have Robert Ackerly, one of the most amazing and cosmic guys I've ever met. He's the original member of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. And we talked about when the first acid was taken and how that happened. And because the Brotherhood actually ended up selling about 5 million hits of acid. But what I remember them for was their importation of cannabis and hashish, the Oaxacan, Mexican, and the Afghani. So let's hear from Robert Ackerly.
When I took acid, I've never been in a fight since then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, different. Yeah, amazing how that works, right?
Yeah, and I saw everything turn to one cell.
Slightly more enlightening.
The
than
ocean and the
barbacuous.
sand. Yeah, big time. That's what lightning happened to me. It was like, whoa, everything was breathing. The whole universe was breathing in one cell. It's like, wow, this is God.
Everything's connected,
Yeah.
and you can see it. Who came up with the actual name?
Chuck Mandel. And then
Yeah.
he was the surfer brother that brought Mike Henson and, Leslie Potts and all those guys, and Herbie Fletcher and the Hawks. And
And that was about what year was that?
okay, well, when we were started taking, the Brotherhood, ripped off the acid in Hollywood. JC gave him the gun. And,
Oh, right. I read about that, yeah.
Tommy Tunnel went and
From
stuff.
some famous person's house or at the time. And now I read from the book Orange Sunshine by Nicholas Shue. Tunnel told Ackerly that he and Griggs had just learned about a drug more powerful and much stronger than heroin, LSD. Griggs was intrigued by the rumors, and when he found out that a flamboyant Hollywood film producer who lived in a mansion in the hills kept a big jar of it on top of his refrigerator, he set out to get it. According to Eddie Padilla, Griggs dropped by one day, told him of his plan, and asked to borrow a gun for the mission. I said no gun, Padilla recalls. Just walk in and slap somebody and tell them you want the acid and they'll give it to you, guaranteed. Griggs shook his head and left. He later told Padilla that Tommy's brother, J.C. Tunnel, found him a gun. The two of them went up there with ski masks and stole that acid. It was still legal, but that's how John got his acid. That night, Griggs, Tunnel, and Buffalo, dressed up in their brimmed gangster hats, donned overcoats, and armed themselves with handguns and shotguns. They drove up to the mansion, barged into a party that was taking place, and stuck their weapons in the face of the hapless producer, who promptly handed over his stash of LSD. And now I quote Chuck Mundell, a surfer in the group. After he, Joe, and Tunnel robbed those people in Hollywood, they brought back that LSD and took the stuff. They must have had a pretty wild experience, because John told me they went to the guy and gave it back to him. John apologized to him and said he wanted to know where he could get some more. Some more.
Then they came back and took acid. So Joe Buffalo and John, Joe was an older guy and he was the heroin connection. Those guys were all doing heroin and stuff, you know. And so Carol, they were living at the French Quarters at that time. JC and Eddie Spaghetti and his wife and Johnny and stuff.
Where were the French Quarter?
In Anaheim, apartment complex. And they were dealing all these pills and stuff when they first started taking the LSD. Well, John was in the bathroom and had a gun. JC got him the gun for the robbery, and they said, "Oh, my kid took the first acid." His kid grabbed one of the pills and took it, and it was like a baby. Joe said, "Take some of it and see what it does." And then so they got JC to take it, the first one. And then JC was the older cousin. He kicked John's ass and blah, 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 you know, the alpha male.
This is before the Orange Sunshine?
Oh, way before that. That was the Sandoz stuff.
Yeah. The pure stuff.
Yeah. And then JC took some and said, "Hey, it's God." And then everybody started taking it. And
Whoa. That's how religions start, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful what you ingest.
Indeed. So this next segment, we have Edward Padilla, another member of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, sailing a boat full of Oaxacan weed from Mexico all the way to Hawaii, and they get lost on the way, but they finally made it anyway.
Well, you mean Bobby's going to talk some more?
Well, Bobby talks, and then we read from the book Orange Sunshine. Remember that?
No.
Okay, well, anyway, we do. So let's hear it.
Eddie Padilla hooked up with the Sinaloa connection, the Papa, and he brought a load up to San Francisco and got busted for it and had to split. And then he went down to Mexico and got the Oaxaca and all that stuff. And then they got the sailboat to Affy and sailed it to Hawaii when the Brotherhood was living over there. But that was later from Dodge City and Laguna and stuff. But
so how did the boat trip end? They got there, right?
Oh yeah, they got there. They sailed.
Because that was the part where I stopped reading. So you got to tell me.
They were on their way and they ran out of gas or diesel, and they were way off course. And Joe Angelini finally found in the direction and told them. And then they flagged the Swedish freighter down, and they gave them gas, and they had all this Oaxacan, just big spears in the cabin, just, you know, uncovered and stuff. And then they're waving everybody, tourists, and waving them goodbye. And then they sailed into Hana, and then Mad Dog and Gordon and all them guys got the boats and went out and started unloading the pot. And then Eddie looked up and said, "Wow, that looks like a lightning bolt." And so that became the lightning bolt, was the load, was the name. And Jerry Lopez started his surf shop and lightning bolt surf and stuff. And that was the original seeds from the Maui Wowie that's here today.
Yeah.
So that's where those seeds came from.
The Mexican weed unloaded from the AFG quickly became famous throughout Maui as Lightning Bolt. Padilla came up with the name while sitting on the beach in Mexico with Joe Angelini, preparing to load the yacht. We were taking it down to the beach and hiding it, and I pulled out a cola, held it up to the sun and said, "This looks like a lightning bolt." And that's how it became the Lightning Bolt load. Within a month, so many lightning bolt seeds had been thrown out of the window or off the porches of various Brotherhood houses in Olinda, Makawao, and Kula that a robust crop of marijuana plants began to spring up like the weeds they were. It was so fertile, all you had to do was just drop seed and let it rain, Padilla says. When Les Potts first arrived in Maui, a few years before the AFG, he recalls that there wasn't much marijuana growing on the island, but some started planting seeds, he recalls. A strain that started was called the Kula Crippler. It came from the seeds left over from the pot that the Toki brothers in Afghanistan threw over their shoulders when they were doing separating and the various grades to make the hash. They'd give you bales of that stuff if you could smuggle it out of Afghanistan, he claims. After the AFG arrived in Maui, a surfer from Santa Barbara somehow managed to crossbreed a lightning bolt plant with a Kula Crippler plant. It wasn't long before acres of the rich farmland near Kula were blooming with the new strain of marijuana plants. As word of the new crossbred marijuana strain spread throughout the island, hippies began carrying it back to California. Brotherhood smugglers like Fat Bobby and Johnny Gale began shipping the weed to Laguna Beach, first in suitcases and hollowed-out surfboards, and then in everything from falsely labeled cans of soup and vegetables to cars and boats and airplanes. Named in honor of the Brotherhood's island utopia, the high-grade pot became a worldwide phenomenon, more famous in some circles than the island itself. I guess the Brotherhood served its purpose by bringing those seeds to Maui, Maydelle allows. It was pretty popular stuff. It was Maui Wowie.
Wow.
And that's the story of how Maui Wowie got to be Maui Wowie.
And then, the hashish in the pot was coming in at the same time. And we were in Maui, and then Jimi Hendrix came over and made Rainbow Bridge.
And then Jimi Hendrix came over.
And made Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah,
bro.
just another day.
Just another day in the life of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love.
No problem. Wow.
That was amazing, huh?
That dude.
And so now...
Yeah, what's next?
Well, Robert Ackerly is amazing.
Yeah. What's next?
Next, we hear from Richard Dailey of Third World, our first musical guest. And he was our first he was our first phone interview.
Oh, yeah, when all the shit hit the fan. All the virus hit the fan.
And my dreams of being the Huell Hauser of cannabis had to be postponed.
Next.
So, I want to talk about the band's latest amazing album, but before we do, I want to ask you a little bit about reggae, a bit of reggae history that you and Kat are part of, just to give our listeners a bit of perspective. And I'm talking about the Smile Jamaica concert, which was scheduled a few days after Bob Marley got shot in Kingston, Jamaica. I believe Third World was part of that show?
Yes, because we were scheduled to play before Bob Marley. And he was in rehearsal like on a Thursday night, and the show was supposed to be on a Saturday night in a place we call Heroes Park in Jamaica, where they have statues of all the Jamaican heroes from past history, like Paul Bogle, to name one or two, and several people who have been prominent in the Jamaican history of standing up for the people's rights and doing great work.
A fitting place for the concert.
Yeah, we were supposed to perform in this concert, and there's a whole lot of political unrest that was taking place in Jamaica at the time. And some people went there, gunmen went there, and just randomly started to shoot up in the rehearsal room through a window,
Oh, wow.
Bob Marley got shot. Don Taylor's manager got shot. And I don't think anyone else was hit.
Rita Marley?
I don't think she was there, but even if she was there, she didn't get hurt. Anyway, fortunately, nobody died, because I don't think it was a direct execution. I mean, if you fire a gun through a window, you must expect to kill someone, but they didn't target like, say, let's aim at Bob Marley, kill him. And if they were planning to do that, they went about it very clumsy, because they didn't show their face or their images. They just put the gun through the window and started to fire, Yeah. Which is not cool. Anyway, be that as it may, we said there was a big discussion whether or not the concert should take place, yes or no. Well, needless to say, and rightly so, half of the band, or more than half of the band, was totally terrified.
I bet.
They didn't want to go on an open stage unprotected, or something where the security level was not that high. And we went there, we performed as Third World. then we went on stage and backed Bob Marley at the time, accompanying him on his songs. So that's the way it was.
So you guys became the backup band for Bob?
Yes, we did. And how we did it, we bring a cluster of people around Bob Marley. Like we didn't leave him on the open stage. Other friends and people just crowd around him while he was singing. So
That's really cool.
If anyone wanted to take a shot at him, it wouldn't have prevailed. So anyway, the concert went on well, and just Smile Jamaica, and he did that song, Smile, You're in Jamaica Now, which was a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the story of Smile Jamaica and Third World and Bob Marley back in the 70s.
Well, that's definitely a bit of history we'll never forget.
Yeah. This is Richard Dailey, bass player for Third World. And remember, it's Cali, it's got to be I.
Excellent, bro.
Earth is a land in the fullness thereof. Beautiful people, most I can take care of. It's pressure bus pipe and Third World. To the world,
Yeah.
What a great show, huh?
Really cool.
I want to thank Richard Dailey of Third World. And right now we're listening to one of the songs off their new album called More Work to Be Done. This song is called People of a Different Color.
we work, we toil, we play. We bleed, we grieve, we fight. No matter where we come from, this is my assumption.
We should have the whole band in here next time to do like a live show or something. What do you think?
Well, that's the way we were going to do it. Remember, we were supposed to be the Hugh Hauser of cannabis,
Yeah.
And we were going to go and interview the whole band, but then this whole virus thing.
Well, yeah.
Phone's better than nothing, bro.
Better than nothing, man.
But
Better
we're
than-
not recording, man.
No. Yes, we're recording.
Are we recording, man?
We're always
The red lines
recording.
must be away from my vision.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay.
There is one engineer in the room, and his name is Joe, the sound guy. Okay, continue.
All
Who's
right.
next?
So our next guest is Tom Schnabel.
Oh, Tom Schnabel.
Yeah, he was the guy at Morning Becomes Eclectic for years and years and years.
KCRW.
Music director. And he was also responsible for bringing us the reggae beat as the music director. He also started the reggae night at the Bowl in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's hear from Tom. Tom, I'd like to start off to take you back a few years before KCRW was at Santa Monica City College when it was in a middle school. I believe you interviewed Peter Tosh, and I was wondering if you could just tell us about that interview and what Peter told you that day.
Peter Tosh came to the station in 1982 to Morning Becomes Eclectic, which I was hosting. Roger Steffens was there because I think I would have been terrified to not have him and his expertise there in the studio with me. One of the employees at the station, I won't mention any names here, went out, drove out in a nice little sort of classic Volvo P1800, and he went out to pick up Peter Tosh at his hotel because he was hoping to get some of the fabled herb mix that Peter Tosh liked to smoke and to share it on the way over to the station. Unfortunately, Peter Tosh would not share any of his righteous ganja with anybody else. So Peter Tosh walks into the middle school, John Adams Middle School, smoking a huge spliff.
Wow.
And he walked into the studio, and the smell is all over the place. And he proceeds to start talking about an experience he had threatening his life.
Who was threatening his life?
He called it Bumbaclot, where he felt the evil spirit surrounding him. He screamed out the word Bumbaclot, and the evil spirits dispersed from his soul and his mind, his room. So he told us those things. This was in 1982. The station manager walks into the station.
Ruth?
And she smells the ganja, and she looks around and says, what's going on here? This has to stop. And she starts walking by Peter Tosh, and Peter Tosh stands up. He was a very tall guy. He had dark glasses on, long dreads, and is smoking this spliff. And Ruth was so sort of taken aback that she basically just skittled into the office and to get away, because she didn't want to have any sort of a confrontation, which is interesting because Ruth, she never did that. But
no, she didn't.
Anyway, she didn't do that. And Ruth was a very, very, very strong leader, strong manager that wouldn't take any guff from anybody. So that was interesting. Peter Tosh is very tall, very black, long dreads, sunglasses, and an incredible singer-songwriter. In what he recounted about the evil spirits that were basically after him, he almost foretold his own death by shooting a few years later. He was assassinated.
Right.
And in just a few years later, and he almost foretold what eventually happened to him with that dream that he recounted to us back in 1982.
Wow, that's an interesting story.
It's more than a story. I mean, if you can bottle that stuff, I mean, you can foretell the future.
Yeah, well,
imagine
the ability to have the psychic vision of the future. I remember when one of my plants got ripped off. I had a dream the night before it got ripped off.
Oh,
that it got ripped off.
Oh, poor plant. Who's next?
We're going to listen to Jerrod Kiloh talk about why cannabis has become essential in the age of the COVID-19 virus. How have the dispensaries adapted to the Center for Disease Control's guidelines?
Well, what UCBA has done is we've taken all the CDCs and the World Health Organization, all the cleaning protocols, sanitation that's there, trying to make sure that we take all of those things into account. And we've sent out a 45-page cleaning protocol for all of our members and all the retailers out there to kind of see what are the best practices to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. As you adapt your business and you kind of try to transition into this new world, you can't leave anything out when it comes to protecting your employees and protecting your customers. So since that was pretty much the most important part, it was easy for all of our owners and stuff to come together. And also, we really paired up with a couple of labor unions. UFCW has always been a real champion for cannabis expansion. So we took our cleaning protocols, took them to the labor unions because, UFCW, they represent grocery workers, pharmaceuticals, and farm workers. And all three of those have been deemed essential. So we're like, can we combine our resources to make sure that we all have the best cleaning protocols for our businesses? So that's kind of how we started off with this, which was, let's make sure everyone has the same information. Let's make sure that they are really kind of narrowly focused to what our businesses look like, because we can talk about what a grocery store does, but we kind of need to be focused on what does a cannabis retailer do instead of being more in alignment with the CDC's requirements and guidelines.
Yeah. Well, are you sharing the resources? Is the UFCW helping you guys? Or are you working together?
It's tough because, everyone kind of looks at cannabis and goes, you know what, we got bigger things to deal with. Like we've got hospital workers who need masks. We've got grocery workers who are making sure people have food to survive. And sometimes people look at us as like, you're essential, but how essential are you? And that's a tough place to be in because my workers and the people who are coming to our shops know us to be essential. And we want to make sure we provide for them. So we're not getting any FEMA support. The federal government isn't passing along cleaning and sanitation supplies to our essential businesses because we're not looked at as essential in the federal government's eyes. We're actually looked at as a Schedule I narcotic and shouldn't be getting any services. Federal assistance programs are not applying to cannabis businesses. And I'm sure we could talk a lot about that, so maybe we should, but I think right now, being able to get assistance from each other has been the way that we've created this community. UCBA just was able to bottle up 2,000 gallons of surface sanitizer. And what we've done is we've bottled it all up, and we're now going to distribute it to all the retailers throughout the state and other people in the supply chain so that surface sanitizer, which I think equals close to 16,000 bottles of Lysol, we're now giving out the equivalent of 16,000 bottles of Lysol so that we can protect our employees and our consumers with surface sanitation. So
That's excellent.
we've got some manufacturers who do ethyl alcohol manufacturing to get concentrates. And so they had 1,000 gallons of ethyl alcohol. And we're like, hey, like, we really need that for hand sanitizers because Purell is, not available.
Mm-hmm.
Going to our manufacturers inside our supply chain and say, how much can you donate to us and to our industry so that we can protect each other? And so we've kind of gone up and down the supply chain and seen who has the proper materials available so that we can keep each other safe. And we're sharing that with each other, including we're sharing it with, communities in need. Going out and giving some of this surface sanitizer and stuff to the homeless is also part of this program. Being able to offer hand sanitizer as we get it to other underserved communities. So as soon as we kind of take care of each other, we take care of the community of which we represent as well. So that's been a big part of how UCBA, and I think this industry has been built over the years. We helped each other out, and that still holds true today.
That's admirable. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for talking to Cali High today, Jerrod, and good luck with everything. And we'll be paying attention to what goes down.
No problem. Thank you for listening to me drone on about the regulations and stuff a bit, but I appreciate you guys taking the time.
No, our listeners do need to be informed. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Appreciate it much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Essential. Essential. What is essential?
Air is essential.
Essential.
Water is essential.
Essential.
Shelter is essential.
Essential.
Food is essential.
Most essential.
Weed is essential.
That's nice.
Buds are essential.
Essential.
Sex is essential. Social interaction essential.
6 feet away.
I want to thank you folks for listening to episode 8 of Cali High. Stay safe. These are trying times. Joe?
Stay inside. Wear a mask.
Stay inside. Wear a mask. Put on your gloves if you have to touch anything coming from outside.
Oh, shit.
Think you left anything else?
What the hell was that?
Well, that was the Maslow's hierarchy of needs put into our essential song with the little buds added.
Cool.
Yeah. And so now we're going to hear from reggae archivist and author and DJ Roger Steffens.
We were on the air for about 7 weeks when Island Records called us and said, would you mind going on the road for 2 weeks with Bob Marley? Yeah. Really? Yeah, I wouldn't mind. And so we got to be with him on and off in all different places, riding on the bus with him to San Diego and going to sound checks at the Roxy and hanging out at the hotel. And I set up 2 evenings on a Monday and Tuesday when he was off. Monday night, we showed him a movie that was being cut in Jamaica at that time called Heartland Reggae, which was the One Love Peace concert film, which also featured Dennis Brown and Judy Mowat and Jacob Miller and Peter Tosh. And he had never seen it. And then the next night, Jeff Walker brought his footage from Smile Jamaica and a documentary he had made a 20-minute demo film of to give to his boss, Chris Blackwell, with the intention of making a full-length feature of this historic night when Bob performed in front of all those people with the bullet in his arm from 2 nights later before. So he got 2 films that he's never seen, I'd seen them several times because I knew the filmmakers. So we sat in the bungalow at the Sunset Marquis Hotel. They have these big chateau that they call bungalows. And Bob and his whole group rented one of them. So there were about 45, 50 people in the living room. And I got to watch Bob. And in the One Love Peace concert film, there's that immortal moment where he brings Edward Seaga, the right-wing,
With Michael
CIA
Manley?
cat, and makes him shake hands with Manley, exactly. And after we watched that, he was asked, what was going through your mind standing between these two guys in whose name thousands of people have been murdered? And Bob says, well, I'm no politician, but if I'm not a politician, only one thing for me to do, kill them both.
Yeah, those were trying times for Jamaica. What an honest response, too.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, so that was kind of surprising. But he was an amazing guy, and the final minutes I had with him were at a 3-hour sound check at the Roxy. He was doing a benefit for Sugar Ray Robinson's foundation, and the first hour he kept singing. He kept singing something over and over and over again that I'd never heard before about redemption. And he went on to do a 3-hour sound check where he played all the instruments himself. And Family Man, his band leader, the bass player, was up in the booth.
Barrett.
Setting the instruments, yeah.
Austin Barrett.
Yeah, that was the last time I saw Bob.
And what year was that?
That was November, I think it was the 28th of November, 1979.
Wow. Has that story been told before, really?
That's an original story. Only he has that experience.
Wow.
Yeah, and tragically, 2 years later, Bob was dead of cancer from his toe.
From his toe?
Yeah, which spread. Anyway.
So what's coming up next?
So next we hear Roger tell us about when he was in his early days in Vietnam. He was a GI, and his first experience with cannabis was smoking these cigarettes, Vietnamese cannabis cigarettes called Park Lanes. And you could get a whole carton of them, and it equaled out to a penny a cigarette.
Wow.
He said they were super strong.
That's crazy.
Let's hear from him.
And sent to Nam. They got there just before the Tet Offensive, and there was no front line in Vietnam, and that's a kind of tension that I don't ever want to experience again.
Yeah, not
and in
knowing.
those days, pre-Tet, they were throwing grenades off motorcycles into sidewalk cafes filled with GIs, and they were, blowing up buildings where the officers lived.
Mm-hmm.
You were always looking over your shoulder. So I needed something to cut the tension, and I didn't want to. I don't like drinking. I didn't want to be drunk, because if you're drunk, you stay fucking drunk.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
Oh, okay.
This is a podcast where we can say fucking drunk.
Oh, right. Okay. So I was looking for something to cut the tension, and all these guys not all these guys, but the guys I was friendly with, my kind of guys, hippies who got drafted. They were all smoking something. They were all smoking something called Park Lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an empty pack of Park Lane about 3 feet from where I'm sitting, and I'm looking at it right now, complete with a Vietnamese tax stamp on it, and it was marijuana with filter tips in Park Lane packages.
Vietnamese weed?
Weed.
Wow.
And you could get it on any street corner for 25 cents U.S. a pack. Or save some money, buy a carton of 200 for $2. In other words, a penny a joint. And it was commie weed, and it was so good.
And it was so good.
So good.
You should have been there.
I remember Thai weed. It must have been similar. Anyway, so...
Wow, that was quite a season.
A great season. We are honored to have had every one of our guests. How did we lucky we are?
How did we lucky we are? I don't know.
So it's and when we'd like you to listen to one of our favorite outtakes too. Here it is.
And we'll say goodbye with this?
We're going to say goodbye. And, we're already into season 2, but we thought this was long overdue. That rhymed. Well, thank you for listening, folks. And stay tuned for season 2 and this upcoming little reflection on our times.
We have a reflection coming?
Yeah. You were playing bongos.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
And the seeds in a jar.
And the seeds, yeah. And you used my Afghan seeds in a jar as some percussion.
Seeds in a jar.
Seeds in a jar. Down in the backyard, quarantine was hard. Domestic captive, prisoner motif. How about a bum rip? Open beer and sit. Baby shoot hoops. Kept riding the coupe. On my own winter, waiting for dinner. Who'll ever know or come to this show? Starting a garden, planting a scene then. Who knows? We will see. In my backyard's custody. When the weather's bad, we groove in the pad. Develop hobbies, only 3 bodies. I'm gonna sneak out, around the block and shout. Washing my own hands, after the postman drops in the mailbox. Envelope, card box, roll up a big split, the backyard motif. Go swim in the pool with basketball rules. The whims of a kid, come in the pool, dad, listen to reggae. It's a nice day, a silver lining, a lost divining. But what's coming next? TV? Oh, it's Trump. Doctor, surgeon, stumped? Briefing paradox. Truth not in a box. Oh well, I'll turn off. Rimsky-Korsakov?